Welcome to Expanding Your Faith, a podcast hosted by Bishop Greer Godsey of the Old Catholic Churches International. Expanding Your Faith brings together a panel of well-educated clergy and laity to discuss modern events with a biblical perspective. Our podcast is about to start. Please stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Expanding Your Faith. I'm Bishop Greer. Joining me this evening is Reverend Marc.
Greetings, everyone.
And Bishop Ben.
Greetings, everybody.
Tonight we're going to talk about purposes, callings, and assignments. This is something that Reverend Marc mentions a lot in his sermons and whatnot. And I thought it'd be a good topic to discuss, especially given that many people right now are kind of listless and without a vision or a purpose because of everything that's going on in the world around us, to maybe help us focus on what's important and maybe give us some guidance and direction towards how we can, maybe pick ourselves up and move forward in this day and age. And so, Reverend Marc, you want to kind of start off and give us a explanation of what purpose, callings, and assignments means?
I have no idea. No. A couple of years ago, I did a series on peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about us not living in peace, not having peace, people being completely discontent, people living in a place of just constant unrest, unease, and lacking peace, having turmoil in their life. And as I was putting together all the material, I had been working on some of those thoughts for years, mm-hmm. and had been teaching. I used to do a lot of mentoring when I first started pastoring, and because I had a number of younger people that wanted to go into ministry, and so I just spent time with them. And this was one of the three things that I constantly talked about: purpose, calling, and assignment. And most of the time, I have discovered that people that lack peace, are people that aren't living into those three things.
Right.
Their focus is just on anything but those three things.
Right.
So I identify our purpose, calling, and assignment as this. Or for our purpose is the reason that God placed us here on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Our calling is that which is specific and lends to complementing that purpose. And then our assignment is seasonal. Our assignments are things that are temporary and seasonal. Assignments are things that prepare us. Assignments are things that we're put in positions to do to assist others. Assignments are those things that we are, again, they're seasonal. The season could be a year. The season could be a few years. Season could be a month.
Right.
But they're seasonal. So our purpose is God placed us here on this earth for a purpose, mm-hmm. and that is to be a child of God, to be kingdom participators, mm-hmm. and to represent the love of God and Christ here in the earth. That's the reason God places us all here, is to be a part of the kingdom of God and to reflect Christ in the earth. Mm-hmm. It's like Paul said, we're all given the ministry of reconciliation. We're all called. We're all placed here to be God's children and to live that out.
Right.
Our calling is unique to us. It's you know uh, the calling is placed on our lives, and I like to say it like this: it's the problems that we were placed here that we can uniquely solve.
Right.
Uh, it's solving the problem of helping someone learn. People become educators. Helping someone heal. People become doctors or therapists, or people are legalistic folks. They're here to follow. Um, uh, Maybe in the area of law or perhaps finance or stuff like that.
Right.
People that are just naturally curious. There are scientists. Those are our explorers. Those are the people that dive deep into the ocean and go in places that I'm like, oh God.
Right. Right.
And they their calling is to be that explorer. And then our assignments, the easiest and quickest way I can say regarding assignment are those moments in our lives that either we're learning, we're coming alongside to help people, we're spearheading something. But the assignments can change. Some assignments are years, decades. Some assignments are, going to school and getting a degree. Some assignments, like there's been many times that I've come alongside ministers that have started churches, and I go to temporarily help them with worship. I'm a pianist and led worship for many years, so I would go alongside and help pastors. I wasn't. My assignment was just temporary. I wasn't supposed to be there for a lengthy period of time, and so when we come off focus, when we leave focusing on those things and we allow all the other stuff, and you said it very well earlier, there's so much distracting us right now. That's when our life becomes void of peace,
Right.
is because we're not synced to that which is part of our lives, that which our lives, the main thrust of our lives. Some people try to do things before they know how. They've try to skip an assignment, and they become restless. They're not in sync with that divine movement for their life. And plans, blah blah blah, purpose, calling, and assignments
Right.
are so vital. And I watch people for years just wonder and struggle and not have peace. And if you were to ask them, what's your purpose? What's your calling? What are you assigned to at this moment? They probably couldn't answer but one, if any, of those three.
Right. So, what would you, uh, there are a lot of people, like you said, that are out there, searching for their calling, searching for their assignment. What advice would you give somebody who maybe is in that listless stage, looking for their calling, maybe have not felt like they've never really found that calling in their life, the thing that they're supposed to do, and have kind of just fluttered from one thing to another throughout their lives? What kind of advice would you give them in finding that calling?
The first thing I would say is to root yourself in your purpose, and that is to be God's child here on the earth. That, to me, that's the first thing that we have to embrace,
Right.
in order to uncover our calling, because our calling is rooted into that purpose. Our calling works with that purpose. So no matter where I'm at and what I'm doing, I'm God's child.
Right.
I am to represent the kingdom of God in the earth. I'm to be Christ in anything that I'm doing. Now, that does not mean that you have to, wear a big cross around your neck or, shove scriptures down people's throat in
Right.
the capacity that you're at. You know, you can be loving and not shouting Jesus every 23 seconds
Right.
in where you work or what you're doing, in your calling. But we first have to remember that we're God's child. We are placed here by the divine, and we have some people call it the anointing, some people call it divine presence, divine spirit, divine energy. We have that spark from the Spirit of God to live and to do. And we have to remember to tap into that in order to walk in our callings and to live in our calling, and also in our assignments. The assignments sharpen our callings. The assignments are those things that our callings flourish in, those times of assignment. Particularly if you're called to be a doctor and you're going to medical school, your temporary assignment is to go to medical school, is to learn that first.
Right.
That sharpens, that enhances you to be a healer, quote unquote. But as far as fluttering back and forth, number one is remember that you're a child of God, and learning to grow in your fellowship with the divine in that capacity first, because that roots you and reminds you that you're placed here again for a purpose. You're here for a reason, and that I have found gives people the drive to look and to discover their calling. The calling of God. My calling is, some people would say, oh, your calling is, it's pastor. No, that's an assignment for me. My calling is to connect people with the love of God. My calling here in the earth specifically is to teach people about God's love and about God's grace and mercy. And my assignments are in the pastorate. My assignments are, how that works for me is I'm passionate and I love to lead people towards the love of God. I don't want to lead somebody towards, live as I say, not as I do.
Right.
I want
Right.
to, what's the quote that you say all the time? Preach the gospel, use words when necessary.
Yeah.
I think is that a Franciscan
It's
quote?
a Franciscan quote. Yeah.
So I'm going to steal that once I learn who said it. But what are you passionate about? And those are the decisions. Those are the things that lend you towards uncovering that calling, because it is a struggle for a lot of people. They just, I probably more so now, because there's so many things that distract us and that pull us.
Right.
And I watch young people all the time, just not just young people, but especially now, just cannot figure out what they want to do, because there's so much, because society tells them, well, you have to do something. You
Right.
must do something.
Right.
You've got to do something.
Right.
And then they're sitting there like, oh God, what is it? I don't know what it is. And they just stab at anything, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
So you'll have to stop me, because this is something that has been years developed inside of me, or I'll ramble all night.
That's fine. And I think that you're right. I think in some cases, especially the younger generation right now, they tend to confuse assignments and callings with each other, and so they look at, I'm going to be teaching at XYZ school, that's my calling, and I'm going to be there forever. And then when things like what's been happening lately, where people get laid off or they get fired or whatnot, then it sends them into a tailspin, because now they feel like they don't have that calling anymore. They're they've lost their calling. whereas their underlying calling is to educate, not necessarily educate at that location.
Well, and a lot of people will, think, oh, my calling is to go to school.
Right.
Well, you can't be in school and university for 30 years.
Right.
I mean, some people try.
Right.
There's some people who are perpetually in school.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you're going to send you out with a degree or a pretty big bill.
Right.
So, yeah, that's an assignment. Correct. That's just to get you, sharpened towards doing things that lend to your calling.
Very good. Bishop Ben?
I was going to piggyback on that. Mark covered it very well by saying, about education over school and stuff. But also, a lot of people don't realize that having a calling doesn't always revolve around being clergy or within the church, neither. It's circular callings like nurses, doctors, EMTs, firefighters, police, etc.
Right. Right.
It's a matter of finding your niche and finding that place where you fit, where you're happy. I recall when I was in seminary school, the abbot said, and he stole this line from Sister Act, but he said it clearly, it rings true. If you go to sleep and all you can think about and dream about is your calling, and you wake up and you live it and breathe it and love it, then that's what you're meant to be doing.
Well, that's very true. And I think that a lot of people today, young people or not, are also miserable because they've either run from their calling or they've chosen a path that they may have thought was the path that they were supposed to be on, but have found out that it didn't fit them very well. And they're scared to change. They're scared to, go back and say, you know what, maybe I should go a different direction. Or in some cases, I've met many a pastor who've said, I ran from my calling to be a minister, to be an ambassador for God in the world, until God finally caught up to me, So I think it is also important to remember that sometimes we do make a mistake. Sometimes we go down the wrong path, and it's okay to say, you know what, I made a mistake. Let me try this again.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's where being rooted in your purpose is so important, because whatever state we're in, in basic human terms, we're here to make things better as
Right.
best we can, to love people and to encourage people, to be that reflection in the earth. So while I'm sputtering, trying to find out that specific thing that is for me, I can step back and still be someone who at least is doing 2 out of 3,
Right.
And I'm focused on, well, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I know I don't have to be a jerk running around the world. I don't have to, I can help make someone's life better. I can get involved into some things. And some people stumble across their calling. Some people know exactly what it is. Some people, they have a faint idea, and then they step out into it and they realize, oh no, that's not for me. I was not called to be in the medical field.
Right.
There's nothing that I think medical science is fascinating, and in my line of work during the day, my day job, I read a lot about that stuff, but it's not something that I'm going to run out and say, oh, I missed my call to be a registered nurse.
Right.
It's not going to happen. I can't handle smells. My nose is very sensitive. So, but there are people specifically that is part of their calling. They are healers. They love to bring people. I love to bring healing to people, to be a part of that process. And part of your calling, to discover your calling, is where you find joy at the other end of what you do. Do you find joy? Is there joy in the midst of it? Is there contentment? that even, even when I'm having difficult days, even when I'm having rough, you know, and being a pastor, folks, sheep can, I'll just say it like this, sheep mess everywhere. They poo everywhere. And so as a shepherd, you either step in it or step over it. Sometimes my goal is always to step over it, but sometimes I step right in it.
Right.
And so you're always having to shepherd and guide and lead as a pastor.
Right.
And so again, part of my calling is to lead and to show people towards, move them and motivate them towards God's love, that embracing, that compassion, to where God embraces us and moves us in the directions we should go. And so, do you have joy in what you're doing? And some people have said to me, "I know I'm called to do this," but they're forgetting the other two, the
Right.
purpose or the assignment. And so they don't have peace, or they have discomfort. Are you forgetting that you have a divine empowerment to do your calling? Are you forgetting that you're supposed to be here? Maybe there's an assignment. Maybe you're assigned to someone, to something. Maybe you need to assign something to you. I When I first started pastoring, I was 23 years old. I was very young. I did everything backwards. I started pastoring young, and then started seminary while I was pastoring, got ordained before I graduated seminary. I mean, it was all backwards. That's
Right.
been my life. But at a young age, I knew that I had to surround myself. I had to link myself with people that knew more than I did,
Right.
because I needed to mature quickly. I used to tell people all the time my learning curve was vertical for
Right.
years,
Right.
because I was trying to learn as much as I could, because I was so young and just didn't, I knew a lot. I knew a lot of scripture. I knew a lot of that, but I didn't know people. I didn't know how to,
Right.
I had a gifting I knew to lead people, but, you got to learn folks. And so I had doctors around me. I had military officers, retired and active around me. I had corporate people that were high in corporate. I had doctors in theology that had pastored for years around me. And all these people around me. I had my bishop's wife. She had a doctor in psychology, and so she helped me all the time. And so I was always linking myself. I was, the law of recognition says what belongs in my life and what needs to go from my life and what needs to stay in my life. I was looking at my life saying, okay, what do I need in my life? What do I need to let go out of my life? And what needs to stay? And what I needed was wisdom and knowledge. And so I was connecting. That was part of my assignment for that season. I was connecting myself regularly with folks that knew more than I did. And I haven't thrown that practice to the side. I love talking to people that know more than I, hearing their perspectives, because I don't know everything. So some seasons and some assignments are linking myself so that I can enhance. And if you're doing 2 out of 3, you'll feel that discontentment, because you need to realign focus. We fail from broken focus.
Right.
When focus is broken, we find ourselves just wandering and sputtering and just, going in circles. So it's so important for us to embrace that law of recognition, where we step back and say, okay, that's one reason I love Lent, because it looks inward. It's a season of looking inward. It says, okay, what am I missing? What part of my life? And I encourage people to do this on the regular. Go to folks and say, hey, how do you think I'm doing? Or, hey, people that you trust, not maybe maybe not a bar acquaintance or something
Right.
like that.
Right. Right.
Or, but somebody that you trust, somebody that you feel has wisdom, and just ask them some open-ended questions. Say, there's times that I've stepped back and I've asked people, I say, hey, does my preaching make sense? Like, I know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I'm not conveying it well.
Right.
So, again, I can go all night on this stuff.
So to pivot just a little bit, I mean, we've talked about some of the callings, like being a healer, bringing God's love to the world. But there are some callings people have that maybe aren't as glamorous or as, you know, considered the best of society necessarily. They're called to do the um, laborious work in the world. The digging of ditches and the trash pickup and those kinds of things.
Right.
So my first part of this question is, what would you say to those people who are constantly treated as though their calling is beneath others? And secondly, about what would you say to people who tend to look down on others' callings because they're not as glamorous or as high society as their own calling?
Well, for the first group, I would say, if it brings you joy and it brings you peace, and that's what I mean. There's some people that just love crunching numbers all day,
Right.
and
Right.
These corporate analysts, and they just love that. And I'm
Right.
going, oh my Lord, I'm going, oh my, I don't
Yes.
get it, but hey, that's them. They love it. That's part of the thing they do. And so, what I would say to those people is, never allow somebody to look at you and equate that you are less than, because Paul gave us a beautiful teaching in his writings talking about how the body works together. There's many members and all of it works together. And so some of the smallest parts of our body contribute into the biggest things.
Right.
So never underestimate, if we are fulfilling what we're supposed to be doing, then that is part of the whole.
Right.
And if it brings you joy, then what does it matter how somebody else looks at?
Right.
For years, and still I do, for years as a young man, I used to love Cadillacs. I still love Cadillacs. And I used to be made fun of all of the time. I'm talking about 15, 16 years old. I thought Cadillacs were just amazing. Well, historically, that is a old person's vehicle.
Right. Right.
It's an old man's car. And I used to get made fun of it. And so I finally got fed up with it one time, and I traded my Cadillac in and bought a brand new Honda Civic.
Oh, Lord.
I hated that car. Nothing wrong with Civics. Nothing wrong with people that drive Civics. But I hated that car because it's not what I liked. It's not what I wanted. And after that, I was at the place where I was driving down the road, and people, of course, people do this around Augusta all the time where they almost T-bone you.
Yeah.
I was just like, please do it. Please just hit the car, because I'm ready for it to total out, so I can just go buy what I want.
Right.
Just do it. Just hit me. And when I finally traded that car, I got to the place where I could trade the car, broke even on the car, and bought a Cadillac. I was like, I'll never do that again. I'll never worry about what everybody else thinks to make them happy. So, because basically what you're doing to make somebody happy, you are fulfilling that happy moment in a fleeting thought towards you.
Right.
Maybe a minute, 2 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, they're thinking about you. And then the rest of their life, they're thinking about themselves. So you're basing your life decision on someone's fleeting moment thinking in your direction of their minute of happiness. Oh, they're doing that's good. That's what I told them to do. Now where's my hamburger that I was going to eat? That's as quick as they'll change on you.
Right.
And so if it brings you joy and you're sitting there reading, or looking through analytics, and that makes your life makes your world spin, and makes you want to sing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and brings you joy, whatever, do it. And as far as those that are looking down at other people, pride comes before the fall. That's the only thing I can say.
Right.
We live in a society that, you have people that do look down at other people, but again, we have to be at the place of all parts are connected and make a whole. WHOLE, make us holistic. And there are people that love to farm.
Right.
I can't stand the smell of manure. There are
Right.
there are people that love that stuff. My sister, she loves cows, and I think cows are great. I usually like to eat them.
Right.
She loves to pet. She wants to pet them. There are people that are fascinated with repairing cars. There are people that can't stand getting greasy or sweaty. There are people, all that stuff, and we need all the mechanics. We need all the farmers. We need all the lawyers and the doctors, and all of us work together, because the lawyer is going to partake of the mechanic's work, and the doctor is going to partake of the farmer's work, and then vice versa. And until our society gets out of that, where you're less than and I'm more than, we're going to be in balance.
Right.
Because you're really talking about an imbalance of how God intended us to function together and collectively. And if you go back and look at the priesthood in the Old Testament, and how the tribes of Israel all worked together, you had the tribe of Levi, that their sole purpose was to take care of the temple, offer up sacrifices, teach the Torah to the people, the Bible, as we would call it today, and teach people, and that was their sole purpose. They didn't work as far as in the fields, they didn't go hunting, they weren't soldiers, but all the other tribes worked with them to feed and bring food to the temple, so that they had food to eat, protection around the temple, and so on and so forth. And so from that teaching just in Scripture, it tells us that everybody's not going to do the same job, everybody's not going to do the same thing, but when all those tribes worked together, the nation was whole and flourished.
Right.
And it's just, that's just a principle.
Right.
That's a principle even for today. Not everybody can be doctors. Not everybody can, not everybody's going to be trash collectors. Not everybody's going to be cooks.
Right.
Some people can't cook worth a darn. And so we thank God for the cooks.
That's right. Bishop Ben?
Well, not more as a comment, but question for both of you all to answer for maybe the general audience. If they were going to do a job, no matter if it be for the church or for secular assignment, how would you categorize calling an assignment? What would be the more, how would you categorize that? What would be more important?
I didn't hear.
So, what would be more important, whether it's church or secular job? What's more important for someone to focus on their calling or their assignment?
It all depends on the season.
Mm-hmm.
So it roots into the purpose. Remembering we're God's child.
Right.
Remember to connect with the divine, the teachings of Christ, living that life fully.
Mm-hmm.
There are some callings that will not flourish until you fulfill an assignment in a season.
Right.
I go back to there's some callings. All of our callings need some level of wisdom and knowledge. Proverbs teaches that constantly. And the connection with the divine and the Spirit, out of the book of James, it says, if any person lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives liberally and doesn't hold back.
Right.
So there are moments and there are times that I lack knowing how to do passionately my calling and fulfill my calling. So the seasons of assignment prepare you or enhance your calling. They prepare you for your calling, they enhance you for your calling. I had years of serving in church. I had years of participating in worship, serving in churches over and over and over again. I had years of traveling and evangelizing. And then, when it was thrust upon, I had years of helping other people fulfill their church's calling. And so there's years of service, there's maybe years of training, there's years of study, there's times of study, learning. If you're going to be a welder, you have they have what they call apprenticeships for so long, where you go in and you start learning that craft until you've honed it, and they can just turn you loose, and then you start teaching other people. You start teaching other apprentices. And so it depends on the season. If you lack in understanding how to, live fully into your calling, if that's where the assignments and the seasonal things come in. Because sometimes to completely unlock and to maximize, my calling never ends while I'm in an assignment.
Right.
If I'm in a season of learning, I'm still active in that calling. It's just minimal. What you're trying to do is you're looking macro. You're trying to maximize, that is, your calling. It's for not everybody's going to be the proverbial Billy Graham, or you think of somebody that's touched the world. Not everybody's going to be Elton John. Not everybody's going to be, but there's some people that can write music just as well, if not better, and play just as well, if not better, than an Elton John, or that have just as much impact as a Billy Graham. But we think of calling in the American sense. It's got to be huge, bigger, bigger. And God is looking for the seed to be planted correctly in the field, as opposed to, having 1,000 trees in the field. God wants you to have fruitful 10 or 15 or 20. So it's important for you to step back and say, okay, how do I maximize and further my calling? Something's holding me back. Maybe it's a lack of wisdom. Maybe it's a wrong connections. Your calling could be held back because you're not connected or living in the right place. But I as far as living in geographical places, people connect that all the time. I need to be in a geographical place for my calling to take off.
Right.
I've never subscribed to that, because wherever you are, your calling's the same, your purpose is the same. You can do big things. Jesus came out of Bethlehem, that little small. So, don't despise small beginnings. I hope I answered that question. I feel like
Yes, I think you did. And you also answered the second question that Bishop Ben had, and that was, what would those seasons look like to an outsider coming into this? So I think you explained pretty well what those seasons look like as well. So how do we, those of us who are in positions of authority, how do we help others realize their calling and their assignment? And how do we help them and foster an environment where they can live into those callings and assignments?
Oh, that's mine. Oh. Well, I think as leader, a good leader, a true leader, not just somebody who's thrown into a management position because they have a degree. Gentle.
Lots of those, yes.
Oh gosh. A true leader is always going to look for people that uh, they have joy when they're solving certain problems or fulfilling a need. They have joy. You see them
Right.
with joy, or as a pastor, I take it to a pastoral, but you can take this principle and apply it to business and other positions of leadership. But as a pastor, I see people that will step in and they be maybe kind of in the background, and you give them something, or you say, hey, can you help me do this, and all of a sudden they come alive, they become talkative, they become vibrant, they love doing certain things, and then you put them in other scenarios and they're very quiet and muted. So what you're doing is, maybe unbeknownst to them, you're helping them unlock a joy. And so when you see that, when you see them excelling in doing tasks that, say your church is in need of somebody to keep up with your building, the physical building of the church, and you have one person that's just never gets anything done, and then you got another person that maybe is not the leader, or isn't the leader, and you say, hey, can you fix this step over here on the walkway or whatever, and man, it's done well ahead of schedule, and it's done like a professional would do it, and they're running back to you going, say, hey, is there anything else I can do, or what? You see a joy or see a passion come out in somebody. You probably have, that person may be the one that needs to be leading, or that person may need encouragement or whatever. So when you see joy in people or passion, you should hone in on that as a leader, encourage it, hey, great job, words of affirmation, all that stuff. And then you make a platform, proverbial platform, or you make a space for them to say, hey, do this on a larger scale, or do more, to see what they do with it. And you're making space for their joy to grow. You're making space for their passion to grow. When I have people take initiative to do things that may not quite pan out, I never come against the initiative. I reinforce what the picture should look like.
Right.
I said, okay, well, this is, and I learned a while ago that I need to make sure they understand what the picture of where we need to be, what the end project needs to look like, what something needs to look like. Make sure that is plain before somebody, so that they can get there using their gifts and callings.
Right.
And so if I see that initiative and it may be a little misplaced, I celebrate the initiative and then reinforce, well, this is kind of what we were looking for. This is what we're going for. We didn't quite get there, but man, I think you did great doing whatever. When you see that in people, when you see those joys, and sometimes it's just small bursts of it. As a pastor, you see small bursts of it. Maybe as a leader or a business, leader, you just see little small things trickle, and somebody gets excited about doing the small thing. You got to catch that. That's why, as a leader, you always have to walk your spaces.
Right.
So if you're a leader and you're catching somebody excited about this but mundane about this other, redirect them. It's a no-brainer. Get them out of the mundane and redirect them over to, something that's putting a smile on their face, and there's a pep in their step, and you're like, oh, that's where they're flourishing. That's what they're doing.
Right.
As worn out as I get as pastoring, I also get recharged on the other side of spending time, counseling somebody or encouraging somebody or just sitting with somebody and listening to them. I get encouraged on Sunday mornings after the message if I don't feel like I bombed. But the real joy comes when people let me know that maybe they didn't hear something, they'd never heard something before, and it unlocked a passion in them, or putting somebody in a position and they just flourish.
Right.
It's just like when you're looking for what your joy, we should be looking for what other people joy in, and try to enhance that, and how can I contribute to that?
Certainly. Bishop Ben, your final thoughts?
Well, I was gonna say, when you're going into having not only your assignment and your calling, but also like Reverend Mark said, passion, joy, love. Have all that in place so you know what you're gonna do with it and how you're gonna do it in your life.
Very good. Reverend Mark?
Oh gosh. Have I not talked enough? I would encourage people that are maybe adrift on all three of these things, or maybe just one or two of these things, are registering with you. Remember, you are part of God's family. You are a child of the Almighty.
Indeed.
You are a divine spark in the middle of this world that, yes, has so much that needs improvement, but we each have been placed here to solve a unique problem, to bring a unique gifting and solution to the world, to our part of the world, and maybe not globally, maybe just our small part of the world in comparison to globally. Remember that if you lean on that divine power, on God's grace, it won't let you down. It'll steer you in the right direction, and it will lead you to discovery and recognizing those things that bring you joy. And if there's anything I can leave you with, is you're God's child, and God will never leave you.
Amen. And my final thought is this, just to reiterate what Reverend Mark said earlier in the podcast, and that is that you have to be rooted in your purpose, and that's where you have to start, as understanding your purpose here to love and serve God, and to love others around you, and to support them, and to be God's light and love in the world around you. And I think that that's something that is sorely missing in our world today. And it's something that we desperately need to get back to, is remembering our purpose here. And also to help support others who are struggling in their walk, struggling with their purpose and their calling and their assignment. And that's how we can make the world a much better place. Well, thank you, Reverend Mark, for sharing with us, and Bishop Ben, for all your hard work.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And I so enjoyed tonight's podcast. Reminder that next Saturday we are not having a podcast because it is Easter Vigil, and I will be busy. But the Saturday after that, which I think is April 26th, is what does the resurrection mean to us? What is the point of the resurrection? What purpose did it serve? What does it mean to us as followers of the Christ? And so hopefully that will be a good podcast as well. And we hopefully will see you all on April 26th for that one. Until then, until we once again attempt to expand your faith, God bless you all. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Expanding Your Faith. For more information on Expanding Your Faith, check us out on facebook.com/Expanding Your Faith. We are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever you find your podcasts. Until next week, when we once again attempt to expand your faith, keep shining bright.